time for us to check in with our NFL draft expert, Matt Miller from Bleacher Report. It's brought to you by Essential Financial Management. Did your tax situation get complicated in 2016? Maybe you started your own business, had major changes in your family. Let Essential Financial Management keep you from drowning in a sea of complicated tax laws. You can get a free consultation today. Visit them at efmcpa.com. That's efmcpa.com. To the hotline we go. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. Good to talk to you, buddy.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on the program. We saw Matt down in Houston when we were there on Radio Row. Talked a lot about where he saw some of the draft needs and such going. Also broke down the Super Bowl, et cetera. But, Matt, let me ask you this. A number of points that we can touch on, and we'll get specifically to the Broncos here in a minute. But when you look at 2013, 2014, and 2015, in 2013 and 2014, we had 0 running backs in the first round. In 2015, there were 2, Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley, and then obviously we all know about last year and Ezekiel Elliott and all of that. When you look at the team needs and this running back class, how many running backs do you think are going to come off the board in the first round as things stand right now this year?
Yeah, I would comfortably say 3 this year. Obviously, Leonard Fournette. I still think Dalvin Cook is a first-round back. There are a lot of question marks there, and it's weird, like, the deeper I dive into him. And that's, like, what this time of year is all about for me. It's like, this is when I really start to dive in on guys. And with Dalvin Cook, it's like, okay, you've got 3 shoulder surgeries dating back to high school. You've had hamstring issues. You have 13 career fumbles. And there are 4 different, like, kind of off-the-field incidents, none that he was ever charged with. He was arrested for battery and was acquitted in a trial, but like there are a lot of question marks there with him. So maybe he slips a little bit. But I would also put Christian McCaffrey in there as a first-round running back, and probably late first round. We're talking like, I could see Kansas City being a fit. I could see Green Bay being a fit. New England is obviously a fit, but those 3 guys, I would feel pretty comfortable saying they're first-round players.
Christian McCaffrey, of course, son of Ed McCaffrey, Denver Bronco, of extreme popularity, and still one of their play-by-play crew on the radio. Obviously, he's a popular candidate in Denver, the familiarity and the fact that he had a terrific college career. But seeing all of Denver's issues, McCaffrey, who can be a weapon out of the backfield as a pass receiver, can run and can be a terrific returner, potentially. Would he be the right choice for Denver, or is that offensive line issue still pending so large that they have to keep going in that direction?
I mean, I would love to see Christian McCaffrey there because what he brings to the table, all the things you just highlighted, I think the offensive line is such a huge need, and there are enough question marks on the defensive line just about guys kind of moving to that next stage of the career, filling in some gaps. But, I mean, listen, this is not a good offensive line class, so if a guy isn't there that you love, well, then the smart thing to do is to go kind of with a home run hitter like McCaffrey, someone who is more of a sure thing. And we've seen John Elway, I think, draft a little more for need than some other GMs do. But he's also been very smart about value. Shane Ray falls in the first round, and you draft him, even though on paper it's not the biggest need. So it's kind of like this mixture of philosophies right now. But, if McCaffrey's there and Garrett Bowles has already come off the board and Ryan Ramczak's already come off the board, then it definitely makes sense to grab McCaffrey there.
When you look at we just talked about the needs that they've got at offensive line, and it may not be the strongest offensive line class that we've seen, Matt, but it's obviously a huge area of need for the Broncos. Certainly some things could change if they made some signings in free agency, but where do you continue to put the emphasis for them if they are going after an offensive lineman?
Yeah. Like you said, offensive line free agency could be good, but if you don't go tackle in round 1, the way I've looked at it is, you could still go pass rusher. You can still get younger out on the edge. You can always add depth at safety. This is a great safety class. I think when I counted last night, I had 9 corners and 7 safeties in the top 50 or something ridiculous like that. So, you can still bounce back to those core groups where you can always get younger, you can always get cheaper. You're going to play 3 safeties, you're going to play 3 to 4 pass rushers. So if you're not able to go O-line, I think there are still enough areas of need. And we've talked before about tight end. This is a really good tight end class. So that's always an area where I don't think O.J. Howard or David Njoku are going to be there, but if either of those guys is there, then that's absolutely an area where you can't ignore that talent.
Man, one of the things I love about the way you break down the draft is you keep your big board public and running at all times. You keep that up on the web or anyone can look at it. Between 20 and 29, you talked about those edge rushers. At the moment, you have 5 guys listed on that big board in that area in which the Denver Broncos could conceivably select. Which out of those edge rushers do you think fits best on the Denver Broncos?
Well, with the, I guess with Vance Joseph, I'm kind of curious to see how much the scheme will change now that he's calling all the shots. So just based on what I think of who he would like, Taco Charlton seems to fit. When Vance Joseph was in Cincinnati, they favored the 6'5", 6'6" defensive ends in a 4-3 scheme. Obviously, in Denver, you have Von Miller, who's probably going to inform most of your defensive decisions, and he's best in an edge role, kind of whether it's a 4-3 or 3-4, he's best standing up. So we'll see if they want someone more like that, who's closer to Shane Ray. I think Taco Charlton would be a great fit. He's sitting right there at number 20 on my board, so the value matches up. He's 6'5", he's 275, so he can give you that power defensive end to lock out tackles. He played over the right tackle in the Big Ten, so he's very accustomed to stopping the run game. He would be a nice kind of yin to the yang of speed rushers like Von Miller and Shane Ray.
Well, and his name is Taco, so let's just
let's get right
to the important part. Matt Miller's our guest from Bleacher Report on Twitter at NFL Draft Scout. Matt, peel back the curtain for us right now in terms of what your process is like now that we're in this downtime, because obviously you don't have you don't have any new games that these guys are going to play. They'll work out at the combine and such. But what goes in now in this time period that you're in between now and when the draft actually takes place? What is it that you and your counterparts, what are you guys looking at right now that can wind up affecting your big board in one way or another?
This time of year for me is all about getting caught up, because during the season, as much as I try to, I might be able to watch 5 or 6 college games a week. So I'm trying to watch a lot of the top guys, but I'm also missing a lot of the top games. And you try to do your best guess of, okay, these underclassmen are going to come out, so I'll prioritize them. There are always underclassmen that you don't expect to come out who do, or guys like Carlos Henderson at Louisiana Tech, not on my radar until he came out. So it's a lot about getting caught up with those guys, but then also making sure that I go back and get, every game that these quarterbacks have played in, to make sure that, a good example is Samaje Perine at Oklahoma. I saw him early in the year and thought, man, I don't really like this kid, just kind of average. But now this time of year, I can say, you know what, why do I think that? Let me go back and watch 2 or 3 more games, see where I'm at on him. So this is really the time for me to check a lot of my early opinions and see if they still hold up.
John Elway, you mentioned the fact that he's drafted for need more than a lot of GMs tend to, and of course the idea of best available player or need is the ongoing debate when it comes to approaches to the draft. But looking at Elway's history through the draft, just at a higher level, do you see someone who's getting better at drafting, or do you see that it's staying about the same?
Well, I do think he's getting better at, and this is a very biased view, I think he's getting closer to where I value players, so I'm going to be, oh yeah, he's really smart because we agree on players, but I think with John, it's still a little early to tell. I loved the Shane Ray pick, and we've seen flashes from him, that are really good. On the other side of it, you can look at the offensive line and say, hey, man, where are the players at? You can look at, at quarterback. I thought Trevor Siemian was a good pick. At the time, I didn't really, 7th-round pick of a guy who's been hurt. You don't think a lot about it, but, he played a huge role for them this year, and everyone I talk to still thinks Paxton Lynch is going to be a good starter in a year or two. So, I think with Elway's draft, you can look at the philosophy of it or the values and say, okay, he got some really good players. And on the O-line, I know we've talked about before, offensive line, you almost have to give those guys 2 or 3 years now, like a quarterback, to develop and get caught up to the NFL game. So I think it is a little early to say whether or not Elway is a good drafter. Now, I think he is a good GM, obviously, because he's been able to recruit Peyton Manning, and he's been able to have the vision to build a defense around Von Miller and to make some trades and make some moves to fill gaps on that team. But as just how good of a drafter is he, I think it's maybe a little early to say definitively.
Matt, we know because, we saw him and you did and probably even had a chance to visit with him. One of the things that happens on Radio Row last week down in Houston with the Super Bowl is a lot of these guys that are going to be drafted start to make the rounds. They're doing interviews with different stations, television, et cetera. around the country. And one guy in particular stood out to me on Radio Row last week in terms of being very personable, smart guy, easy to talk to, and that's Patrick Mahomes. What kind of grade and how do you grade him out? I think he's a guy that for a long time people talked about as a second rounder, and yet I'm starting to hear these whispers that he might sneak into day one.
Yeah, I like Patrick Mahomes a lot. I think I've told you before, he and his dad and I have a bet that he'll be the first quarterback drafted or not. His dad reached out, was like, I bet you a steak dinner, Pat's the first quarterback drafted. And it's like, you know what, hey, I hope he is, but I'm going to take that bet just so we can get dinner after the draft to catch up. But I have him right now in the second round, but on the other side of that, I have talked to scouts who say, listen, all these quarterbacks in this year's draft need developed. Every one of them, whether it's Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Kaiser, Mitch Trubisky, Mahomes. So why not draft the kid with the best tools? And because you're going to have to take 2 years to fix them all anyway. Mahomes has the strongest arm. He has an athletic pedigree with his dad and his grandfather and his mom being a good athlete as well. Great kid, like you said. Academic all Big 12. He's very smart. And he's an athlete. So it's like, if you're going to say, listen, if you're the GM and you go to the owner and say, it's going to take 2 years. We're going to draft a quarterback early, but it's going to take us 2 years to get him on the field. There's an argument out there to draft the kid with the most upside, and that is definitely Mahomes.
And he's the guy, like you just mentioned it. He is somebody that a team that is set at quarterback could take him, knowing that they're drafting a guy who's got incredible upside and who also can come into a situation where he has no pressure.
Exactly, yeah. And so it's almost kind of like that Paxton Lynch situation of, you know what, if you get on the field early, it's great, but it's not Blake Bortles where, right. Holy crap, we have to get you on the field, and hopefully it works, so with Mahomes. And I think he knows that. Like, the conversations he and I have had, he knows that he has to work on footwork, and he knows that he has to work on regurgitating a play call and getting better at spitting that verbiage out in the huddle because of what he wasn't asked to do at Texas Tech. And I'll give him credit because I've talked to a lot of air raid or spread quarterbacks over the past 5 years, and a lot of them will be defensive of, well, I've done more than you think, like, I'm going to be fine. Mahomes is coming at it from I don't know anything, let me learn everything I can about the position, and been very open to critique. He's been very open to my opinion of these are the things you want to work on, and I think it was you I told a story that when I talked to his trainer about what are you guys doing to get him ready, they said that they won't even let him throw away like a piece of garbage in the training facility without lining his feet up first, because it's all about the footwork with him. So, if he's going to go launch a piece of paper into the trash, they make him line his feet up and throw properly. So, he's committed to getting better, and that makes me love a kid when, you have others throughout the years who've been like, no, don't worry, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. And then you have Mahomes who's like, hey, man, I trust your opinion. I trust my trainers, I trust my coaches, what should I be doing to get better between now and the draft?
I was really impressed. I had a really brief conversation with him off air, and I was just really impressed, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring him up. I think he's one of those guys that by the time we get through Combine and Pro Days and all of that, teams are going to talk to him, and that some of that personality, that intelligence, those kind of, I think that's going to rub off on a lot of teams, and I think he might sneak into day one.
I would
really
not be surprised.
I really, in a quarterback-driven league, I could see him do that. Matt, we know you're playing Mr. Mom this morning. Thanks for taking some time.
I heard.
And thanks for taking some time. We'll continue to visit with you as we get throughout the draft. Good seeing you last week in Houston. We'll talk soon. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.